Good?
Yep,
Good.
we are. Thank you.
So keep in mind that the Bigelow era research was done late 90s, early 2000s, and the technology
Yes.
change between
Thank
now
you.
and then is extremely dramatic. Look at the advent of cell phone technology, right? I mean, this right here has two cameras on it that are far superior than anything Bigelow even could have imagined, right? The cameras they had were terrible. They had a few, and they were very expensive back then. And the things they did were unusual. Bigelow, what we've seemed to uncover is he was more interested in the ooga booga and the woo woo stuff than actually the technology advancement that might be there. Although he did tell Jay Stratton, the director of, and Dr. Lukaski, the directors of ATIP, that if they wanted to see a UFO, that they needed to go to Skinwalker Ranch, and that's how come the Pentagon got interested in it. But when we got there, I say we, the ubiquitous Brandon Fugel's team, Eric and Thomas and Dragon got there. They were there 2 years before I joined the team. What they discovered were very antiquated systems, very rudimentary systems, and weird things like they had aquariums on poles with Ouija boards in them. and one of the aquariums actually had like little spelling blocks. Like a kid thinking that whatever's going on, they were going to leave them a message in the spelling blocks, or it was with just weird stuff like that. And while Eric Davis, the scientist, I guess I would say Eric's counterpart to the Bigelow era, was he's a sharp guy.
Excuse me?
He says that they had very inexpensive equipment and that they mostly had to grow their own, and that Bigelow was very frugal and wouldn't give them any money to buy stuff, and that they made do with what they had. They had some night vision stuff, and at the time, which was very rudimentary compared to what we have now. And so, no, whatever is happening now is not something that Bigelow left behind. In fact, we found everything that they left behind, and in fact, Eric has brought some of it online just so we can compare and show how rudimentary. I mean, it's like an old black and white TV compared to a big flat screen today. I mean, that's how different the technology is. I'm not saying they didn't see some interesting things, but they didn't have RF spectrum analyzers like we have. They didn't have the radiation detectors. In fact, Eric Davis told me that they never even thought to look at the microwaves when things happened. And so they had no idea that there was a microwave signal that was accompanying a lot of the phenomena, which we have found, which is almost like clockwork. They didn't have geophones to measure seismic activity. They certainly didn't have ground penetrating radar and things like that. They literally they had people walk on the field, looking for stuff. They dug holes at random. They did weird, stuff. Now, and I'm not like dogging them. I'm saying they did the best with what they had, the budget they had, and the equipment available at the time. The equipment we have available now is so much cheaper, so much more advanced, so much easier and readily available, except for such a stupid logistics chain problem with microchips and stuff. But other than that, I'm amazed Bigelow found anything.
Yeah.
But no, whatever this is, it's something else. It's somebody eavesdropping on us with state-of-the-art something that we don't know exists, which I doubt, or it's something else, and I don't know what that is. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there anything that you learned as chief scientist of the UAP task force about how the government views and analyzes this data that surprised you, or was that your entire role, is to gather the data and interpret it?
Yeah, so the leader of the guy who started all this and made it happen, Jay Stratton, Jay's nickname, John's first name. But Jay started this with the Office of Navy Intelligence and with the DIA back in the late 90s. As he worked through the ONI ranks, he ended up being the by the early 2000s, mid 2000s, he was the equivalent civilian rank of a 2-star admiral. And he was running the program hoping to find a nuts and bolts craft. And what happened was someone came to him with the 2004 Nimitz data and said, somebody should be looking in this. And it was his job actually, his actual job was threats to our airspace, with the Navy's, threats to naval airspace, the naval test ranges. So he started looking into it, and he was like, holy crap, they've actually got ADFLIR footage of objects. They've actually got, radar data of objects. And, excuse me. And so he started putting a team together, and Lou Elizondo, so it was really interesting. He and Lou kind of leapfrogged each other and who was running it and who wasn't. And Lou was never officially, this is the way they do it in the Navy. And so when you see all this, like Green Street and the idiots like that, they're trying to debunk everything. When they say, well, he was never, we've looked in his position description, never says he was the leader of some UFO investigation. It was other duties as assigned. And there was never any extra budget put there for him to go do it, but it was a task that was given to him. Like when I was the chief scientist, I was a civil servant with the Army, and Jay called my boss, that was his equivalent, actually 1 star lower than Jay, but and he said, hey, I want Travis to come work for me on this task force. Would you mind loaning him to me for a while? And they said, why do you want Travis? Funny, Jay and I talk about this because it was a big compliment to me, and I didn't even know him at the time. My boss asked him, so why do you need Travis? And Jay said, because Travis knows how to build shit. That's exactly what he told him. And my boss laughed apparently, but Jay, then I went up and I briefed Jay on some things that were happening at the ranch, and he said, yeah, come in and be my chief scientist. It was never on paper anywhere in my position description that I was the chief scientist. But when we went to the White House and to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Jay, a 2-star admiral equivalent, introduced me to the White House chief scientist as the chief scientist of the UAPTF. And as far as I was concerned, that was good. And he told me to put it in my signature block, right? So and I was the equivalent of a full bird colonel as a civilian. And so when a 2-star tells a colonel to put something in their signature block, they do it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all, what they're doing is they're using semantics to try and debunk things. They don't even know why they need to debunk that.
Yeah.
I mean, just trying to discredit things for no reason, which suggests that there's an imperative behind the discrediting and the debunking. And in fact, we actually saw that in the task force. There was a group within the government that they told us several times, it's demons and angels, y'all need to stay away from it. And they literally tried to steer us away and steer funding away from us to keep us from looking into it. It was really odd. I know, it was the same odd thing. But what I did with the task force, so when I went in, Jay said, we got all this data. And the problem is, every piece of data is from a sensor on a different military piece of equipment that has a different classification. And you can't put something that's this classification on a computer that's got this other classification. And so we couldn't take something, say, from an F-35 and an F-18 and put them on the same computer to do analysis on it. Or from a Navy radar and from a FAA system and put them all, there was no way to put all that in one system. And it took us a year just to figure out how to store the things we were getting. And that was the hardest part. But, and here's the thing. While the National Defense Authorization Act of 2019, 2020, 2021, and then 2022 did put in funding for the UAP task force, it never, so the way it works is a committee or a subcommittee will put in language for the money, but the money then, the language then has to go through the Senate Appropriations Committee. And the Appropriations Committee are the ones that actually writes the check. And it never came out of the Appropriations Committee, and there was never any funding put on the UAP task force. We did all of it on our own time, basically as other duties as assigned, and it was a lot of work. And I still had my day job stuff I had to do as well. And then COVID hit. So we couldn't travel. We had to do everything through a system that's called a Tandberg. It's basically a classified video conference system. It's basically like Teams or Zoom, but for classified. And one of the things when we finished the first year was we were figuring out how to handle the classified stuff and what needed to be classified and what didn't. And Jay's first priority was, look, we don't want to classify things just to classify them. People will have a right to know what they have a right to know. And what we need to classify is anything that would give away a threat to us or give away an advantage of ours. Basically, ways and means is what we call it, or methods and means, and technologies. Like, we couldn't, if a F-22 videoed something on a sensor that was classified that it even existed, we certainly couldn't show that this F-22 had captured it, because then the Russians and the Chinese would know that we had a sensor that would do X, Y, Z. So there's a lot of that. That's the main reason for things being classified when it comes to the UFO stuff in this regard. Now, I will say that one of the things we kind of run into was, what if there was a group that wasn't telling us everything?
Yeah.
The National Defense Authorization Act of 2020 had a clause in it that said they had to tell us, or as a felony if they didn't tell us. If we came and asked them, said, you don't have to tell us your super secret program, but you got to tell us that it's you doing something. And we went to everybody, and they all said, no, it ain't us. And we reported that to Congress. And then the really interesting thing, though, is we heard in some back channel conversations, some folks say, well, we would have told you if it was us or not. And wait a minute, but it'd be a felony. and I'm not going to talk about who those people are, because there's things happening about that. So there is no Men in Black conspiracy. Oh, and when the UAPX guys say that they came and got the radar tapes off the ship of the Nimitz and all that, Jay called. They had 2 NCIS guys in the fleet, because there's always 2 NCIS guys when they do a thing. You know what Navy NCIS is? There's like a TV show about it. There's 50 of them, right? There's NCIS LA, NCIS, Hawaii, whatever. But it's basically it's like the FBI of the Navy. Well, and there's 2 officers. There's one always on duty when they do all these fleet things like this. So Jay had the authority. He called them and said, "Hey, go make sure that that there wasn't some Men in Black that did this." And it turned out the admiral of the fleet had these 2 NCIS guys who were wearing just jumpsuits, blue jumpsuits, which is what we wore off duty on the ship. They went around, and everything that took data of these, they gathered it up and took it to the admiral of the thing, put it in their main observation room, so that all their experts could come in there and look at it. And then nobody really did anything with it. They were told to ignore it from the Pentagon, so they just shoved it in a drawer. No Men in Black came and took the stuff. But every time Kevin Day tells the story, oh yeah, Men in Black came and took the took the data from it. No, Kevin, he wasn't even wearing black. He was wearing blue. We know for a fact. We've gone back and found the history. What happened to that? And we've never found a Men in Black. Me and Jay begged. We put out bait. We're like, come on, bring it on, Men in Black. We want to see who you are. If there is such a group, and there may be, I don't think they're within the government. I think they're within a private organization that is beyond FOIA, it's beyond the government reach, and they're probably multi-billion-dollar corporations or multi-billion-dollar folks who are pretty much untouchable, which we've seen in the last few years, that the billionaires can pretty much do whatever the hell they want.
Could it be a contractor of the government?
So if they're on contract to the government, anything related to that contract is FOIA-able.
Oh, okay.
But if they do it on their own internal research and development funds, the own company's funds, those are private funds, and the government has no say on what can or cannot they can do with those funds, and they don't have to tell the government what they're doing with those funds. I mean, that'd be a violation of their constitutional rights, which doesn't mean they wouldn't do it.
What if Bigelow was trying to fool you guys? You just left all that crappy stuff there.
Well, I will say that Bigelow has not come completely clean with us and has not showed us the complete final report or the results. And while I was UAP Task Force Chief Scientist, I had access to all that. And there's no final report. The only final report is very science fiction-y stuff written by Eric Davis. And I asked Jay about it. And so this was before my time. See, this was back in the early 2000s. And so what happened? Senator Inouye, another one, and then Harry Reid. Stevens, yeah. They did a plus-up of $20 million and led a contract to Bigelow Aerospace to investigate the UFO phenomenon. And by the way, this is about the time that Jay realized that he couldn't keep going to Congress and talk about UFOs, and if they did, he'd never get the meetings with the staffers. So he changed it to unidentified aerial phenomena then, just so he could be getting into the meetings with the staffers and so on. It wasn't anything weird about it. It was simply a clever sort of ploy being the wrong word, but a clever
word manipulation that Jay used to get past the moat dragons of politics. And it worked well, even though none of us like UAP. He don't even like it. We all like UFO. But it does cover a bigger gamut of things, though, right? So anyway, and so the $20 million was supposed to go on this contract to Bigelow Aerospace, to BAS, Bigelow Aerospace Systems, and originally the first increment came and Bass got just under $10 million. Then someone in the Pentagon realized that what Jay was doing with the program, and they came and said, "Oh, we're going to take that. You're not putting the rest of this $20 million on this crazy stuff." And they took the $10 million and put it on their own whatever they want to. And in the government, if it's under something like $40 million, you don't have to tell anybody. I mean, they can move it around. Yeah. And so Bigelow was pissed. I mean, think about it. He was promised a $20 million contract. He got half of it. And so I suspect, and I don't know this, I don't take this as 100% fact, but my inclination is that he probably said, "This is all you're getting from me. Take this crap that Eric Davis wrote, and that's what I'm turning in as my final report. If you want more, it'll cost you $10 million. I mean, that's what I would have done. Right? And you know, and Bigelow is the one who told Jay, if he and Dr. Lukatsky, that who was running the program at the time, if you want to see a nuts and bolts UFO, you need to come to Skinwalker Ranch. And that's how Skinwalker Ranch became a focal point, at least during the late '90s, early 2000s, up till now, on the UFO, UAP kind of phenomena research. Yeah, in the back.
So I'm interested in how interested the DoD is in all this ultimately on a scale of 1 to 10. And why I ask that is that two things that strike me is the GPS disturbance that convinces somebody they're not at the right altitude, and the gamma ray seems to be
they didn't know any of that until I got there.
Yeah.
So and when I reported this, I was still part of the task force, and it disturbed me. That's actually how I got on the task force, when I discovered the microwave signal. I thought, this is like a anti-personnel kind of weapon system, and it's startling, and I need to report this because it's possible national security implications. I wasn't violating anything with Brandon or the show, but and they didn't know I was part of the task force. But I had to, I wasn't even part of the task force at this time, but as a government employee, I had to go and report it, of channels. And so I went to the Pentagon, and I was briefing about the microwaves and stuff, and that's when the first time I ever met Jay. He walked into the room, and he listened to my brief, and then he asked everybody else to leave, and then he opened up a folder and had all the UFO stuff in it that he had been doing with the ranch and all that, and said, so come join the task force or whatever, and he said we believe there is more here, and this is the first time anybody's actually had instruments to get hard data. He said Bigelow, he didn't have quite the capabilities and so on, and so their interest was that it's a hot spot, and it looks like these things are similar to things that happened in other places where we have Navy vessels and Air Force bases and whatever. And if there's a chance of getting data
that could help them figure out what's happening there, that was the interest. There's been no money, and they never, I had to make sure that when I charged my time to the government, it was never while I was doing work at Skinwalker Ranch. I don't have to worry about that anymore since I quit the government and I work for a contractor. I can do whatever I want to. And it's such a burden that's gone. But the GPS thing, seeing that something spoofs or jams or hacks GPS or changes how GPS works in that area so precisely is extremely bizarre. No one's ever seen anything like that before, and the implications could be staggering. Imagine if you could do that over any battlefield you wanted to.
Exactly.
And so we better hope it's not the Russians or the Chinese. But even so, that tells us, okay, well, whoever or whatever these things are, if we ever had to go to a conflict with them, then we better not depend on our GPS. All of our flight systems better be eyeballs, right?
So much could just go haywire. Everything.
Yeah.
So at what point does the DOD get to step in, or do they? Because it's
private property. Yeah,
Yeah,
DOD
so they don't ever get to
unless
say eminent domain or anything.
well, it would take an act
National
of Congress kind of thing to do it, or some sort of National Security Act
And
thing.
the pinpoint gamma ray, which is how I look at it, because if you go back and you detect it, it's not there, and no one else is affected around you, you specifically, that's weapons grade. I'm sorry, that's like
Oh, we don't know how to do that.
no.
You know, I worked
know.
on the
Ex-radiation
Strategic
worker
Defense
experience.
Initiative from the time I was
That doesn't
17,
happen.
and our gamma ray laser systems, they're like as big as a basketball coliseum, cost hundreds of billions of dollars, and the beam is one only, and it's wide as a football field.
Yeah, right.
You know,
exactly.
everybody around me would have been fried.
Yeah, I know.
And
right?
how I got radiation, enough radiation that on my dosimeter, which was on my hip, I think it's over here, that it showed just enough that it set off the alarm, but then I had burn marks on me that would have been probably an order, maybe 2 orders of magnitude more than what the thing was
You
reading.
had radiation poisoning.
Yeah, I actually had radiation
Tell.
poisoning. Yeah, I had all the symptoms of radiation sickness.
And then it affected your finger, right?
Oh yeah, I had, to have
it's
I had
the whole
surgery
body.
on my finger. It created a dendritic osteophyte, which it basically, like, these two little bones started growing out of my finger, and when we looked at it on the X-ray, and I calculated it was exactly the right size to be a little microwave antenna,
Oh my God.
which was really weird. So they had to go in and they just cut my finger open like this and laid it that way, and then this is a great dinner talk. And they shaved off all that and cleaned up, and it was completely sterile. Usually, if there's an osteophyte, it's caused by an arthritic thing or a bacterial infection, but all the fluid in it, they sent it for analysis, or we sent it for analysis, was completely sterile and showed the doctor had never seen anything like it before and no idea. Now, the one doctor, I had 3 different doctors looking at it. One had worked on Navy folks that had been exposed to radiation, and he said that he had seen similar phenomena at joints of people who had been exposed to fairly high doses of radiation. And I find that really interesting. Nobody. There were people as close, to you guys to me. None of them had any symptoms. Their alarms didn't go off. Nothing. Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm.
Weapons grade is what it is.
Yeah, people keep
is.
saying that. I wish I would quit saying that. Right?
What did you say?
That I was almost like I was targeted.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but that's what it comes
That's what it looks like, isn't it? Yeah.
So, above the triangle, this is more of a statement, but I'd like to hear your take on it. Above the triangle, it seems like whatever's there has some mass. What do you think's going on up there?
There is something above the triangle. That is about all. You cannot see it with the naked eye. We have detected it with collision avoidance radar on a helicopter. We've detected it with we've detected microwave signals coming from there. Every time the telescope experiment we did last year was absolutely disturbing. The fact that this is a closed system. It ain't like a cell phone that's connected to the cell towers and the internet. Those little computers on the telescopes they're burned into a chip, literally burned into a chip. And so for us to see a star and say, oh, that star's about to go behind the anomaly, it's Arcturus, okay? Arcturus, we're watching it, as soon as we say it out loud, it vanishes from the catalog inside this thing. And that happened 4 different times. And then for the handheld system, that only electronics on it was a cell phone on the eyepiece. We're looking at the cell phone, it's getting great images of Jupiter, and as he takes it by hand and starts to roll it over to the anomaly, the screen goes black. What? Push it away, screen comes back. Pull it to look at the anomaly, screen goes black. No, right?
Yeah, right.
And the astronomy guys from the Astronomical Society up in Salt Lake, they were freaking out. Yeah, because they were very skeptical. All 3 of them were very skeptical when they got there. And by the time they left, they were like, "This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. There's no way this is real. How are you guys doing this?" We're like, "You tell us. It's your stuff, right?"
Exactly.
I'm smart, but I'm not that smart, dude. The way I would break your telescope is hit it with a hammer.
Physically deflecting things too, isn't it?
What's that?
It's physically deflecting things, isn't it?
And, well, several times we've launched rockets through it and seen the rockets be pushed away. Well, let me just tell you that we have done an intensive investigation into that area so far this summer, and the things we've found are absolutely unbelievable and amazing and baffling, and I can't wait till you
Are
guys
we going to get to see those? Are you going to hide those for future?
No, those will be. Cause it's so amazing that there's no. If it didn't get in the show, I don't know what they'd put in the show. Yeah, it's funny. Eric and Thomas did a calculation estimation of all the hours we actually film, because all this stuff takes a lot of time to do, and we do things over and over. People say, "Why did you do it twice?" Well, of course we did it twice. But a TV show is 42.5 minutes long, and is 0.87%. No, I mean, so less than 1% of what we film actually makes it on the show. So 99% of the stuff that we do, you never see, and we can't talk about because they may decide to use it in a future episode. So it's a little difficult in conversations like this, because I know you guys want to know, and we'd love to tell you, because some of the stuff is so crazy and so
We
amazing.
won't tell anyone.
How many times have you heard that?
Yeah, really.
We won't tell anyone.
Well, this is just pure speculation, but it would be really cool if someday we caught on camera one of those rockets actually hitting a UFO.
Yeah.
That would be cool as hell.
Do you think you're getting closer to the answer of what it is, or at least fully eliminating what it's not?
I think all we're doing is so originally I had a Venn diagram that's like one circle, and I was hoping I was going to start cutting it out with the natural phenomena, near peers, rich billionaire, evil, billionaire,
Dr. Evil.
Yeah, Dr. Evil, right? Then aliens, right? Or then angels and demons, whatever. And now it's like and other. And it seems like the other is like the circle that's just covering it all, and I don't have any idea what it is. No, we get more data. When we'll zero into something, it seems like we'll be getting close, and then it's like the ranch has a personality that's a trickster, like Loki, and it's like, oh, you guys think you got it figured out, and it'll change it and do something else over here that's completely different, and just like it might change the frequency of the that we use to detect when we see things. Or it might, be quiet at Homestead 2 for a while, and it's, real noisy somewhere else. It's completely baffling, but it does suggest, because of what seems chaotic or random to us, that if you were looking at it from a multi-dimensional aspect, like for example, if this plane of this table is the only reality that, say, we could see, so we could only see by looking across the plane. Well, imagine a three-dimensional object like your hand. Right now, what we would see is 5 dots.
Yeah.
So we think it's 5 separate things happening. But what we don't see is the rest of it connected somewhere else, or elsewhere, or elsewhere. And that's the thing that it's so odd that suggests to me some sort of multi-dimensional aspect to it. It could be through time and space, or one or the other, or something completely different. I don't know.
Do you think the rockets are a little bit aggressive, like maybe a different way to study what's going on up
We've tried
there?
a lot of things, and a lot of things haven't made it on the show. We've tried balloons, we've tried multiple drones, we've tried smaller rockets, larger rockets, we've tried airplanes, helicopters, dirigibles, and you'll see in season 4 we got I would say, I don't know if more aggressive is the right word, but more voluminous in the way we measured it, and it's I don't think. Hey, you know what? Look at Thomas's brain. Look at the radiation sickness I had. The hell with aggressive. I want to throw rocks at it if it'll help. You know, is that like the general in War Games said? I'd piss on a spark plug if I thought it would help, right? They were aggressive to us first.
Can we talk about the 33 experiment? Is that you threw out?
We'll do that in a minute. She had a question first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You probably can't say it, but are you ever going to dig up that long metallic thing you found?
Oh my God, for sure.
It's like you did that on the first episode.
Long metallic thing.
Right on the road.
Oh, yeah.
That was in front of Homestead too.
Yeah, so that's right on the road, right in front of Homestead too. So what it turns out, we had another, actually probably a world-renowned GPR expert come and talk with us about the data that we collected with that setup. And the guy who was running that particular experiment running the equipment for us, I don't think he quite understood exactly how the equipment worked. And what it looked like we measured was a boundary layer in a different soil content. So it went from squishy soil to hard soil, or vice versa. And in fact, when we drilled in multiple places, that's exactly what we saw. Was it went to a point where it was going right through the soil easily, then it hit something that it would barely go through, and when we pulled it out, it was this. They called it claviche or something. It's a kind of clay that is in the Okay, it's a clay-like, really compacted, million-year-old clay or something around here that is hard as a rock.
Arizona's got a caliche bar in there.
But I thought it was metallic. You measured some instrument.
So what it turns out was based on the shapes of the arcs that you saw in that data.
Yeah.
That was where the layer was, but it's based on the curvature of those arcs. Is what the other expert told us. That I didn't. So I'm not a GPR expert, but then when he explained to me it's basic physics, and it was perfectly obvious that the shape of the curve, the angle there, is based on the index, the thickness or density of the material, and how the particular radio wave travels through it. And it's basically like, when you shine a laser beam through the water and it bends based on the index of refraction of the water. Well, this is what's happening, and this is what the return looks like, and you can measure from those angles on those curves what the material is. And it turned out that it was like a rocky material.
Oh.
And but we used much better equipment this year, and they had this expert, and you guys will be amazed at what we found. There's nothing there in the road in front of Homestead 2, at least as far as we know.
That was a big cigar shape.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. That's what it looked like. But we have found something that if you had something like this and you looked at it that way, it's possible that there's something like that we've discovered.
Ooh.
Oh, you're doing
Oh.
that same last episode you had, right? When you were drilling into that side and that.
Of the
Yeah.
mesa?
Yes, yes.
Well,
Curious about that for sure.
yeah, so there might be something there. All I can say is keep watching.
Keep watching.
And we don't know exactly what it is yet either. So. All right, so you had a question about something in the back?
33.
Oh, the 33 experiment. Do you guys know what the 33 experiment was?
No.
Okay, so
I do.
on the excuse me.
We thought long and hard.
Yes, we did, didn't we?
Well, so on the Skinwalker Ranch, so it's skinwalker-ranch.com. That's our website. that we have an insiders thing there. I don't know the economic details. I think it's like if you do a year subscription, I think it's $8 a month. If you do 1 month at a time, I think it's $10 a month, something like that. But we have live camera feeds that you can look at the ranch all the time. We get on and there's a live chat. We'll chat with you guys when we have a break or something. And we've been doing, while we're out here filming, once a week we've been having a live hour-and-a-half thing we call Chips and Salsa, where you guys get on and you guys ask us questions and we talk about
Thank you
things.
for doing that. That's awesome.
And we didn't last week because we were out of town. I can't tell you why we were out of town, but at any rate, and then I got sick. So we'll probably do one this week. But anyway, so during the last Chips and Salsa, maybe 2 Chips and Salsas ago, it was 2 Chips and Salsas ago, so probably a month ago, a lot of people were texting in the chat saying we would love to do an interactive experiment, and me and Eric had been talking about doing an interactive experiment. I said, well, all right, I got an idea. Let's do a quantum consciousness experiment with Homestead 2. And so we took a gamma ray detector and we went and put it up at Homestead 2 and had a camera put on it, and we were data logging. I said, we're going to turn this thing on at noon tomorrow, and I want all you people out there to think of the number 33. And so I don't know what the outcome's going to be. Maybe it's going to read 33 millirentigens per hour. Maybe it's going to get 33 counts per minute. Maybe it won't do any of that. But think of 33 and see if anything happens with that. And so we did that, and then 36 hours later, we went and got the thing out of Homestead 2. Eric got the data, compiled it, and when we looked at the data, what's really interesting, so the counts per minute through the whole duration at Homestead 2 is a really accurate gamma ray detector. The peak, so it's a curve. It looks like the bell curve, right? It's a Gaussian, it's the mathematical term. But the peak of the curve was at 40 counts per minute, meaning it ticked 40 times. Gamma rays hit it 40 times per minute. And it should have been an equal smooth curve of all those numbers out from infinity to 0, on each side. And the likely of it getting an infinite measurement should have been almost 0, and the likely of getting a 0 measurement should have been practically 0. And then just like A's and B's, right, on the bell curve. All right, well, so our class average was 40. And what's really interesting about the data is there was absolutely a hole where 33 should be. There was not a single measurement of 33 hit counts per minute over a 24-hour period, which is impossible.
Wow.
And I find it's amazing, right? Now, it's possible that there's a glitch in the software, but we've never seen that glitch in the software happen before when we've done things. And so we're looking at ways to revise the experiment to get more accurate measurements and repeatability, so that we can maybe write a paper on this, because this is a very interesting phenomenon.
Because it has for quantum consciousness.
Well, I will tell you that while we were filming that next day, one of the producers was there, and suddenly his phone, some app opened up, and it just had a big number 33 on his phone. And he said, I don't know what is this? And he showed us, and we're like, holy shit. and isn't that crazy?
It is.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It would be really interesting to see if there are other things we can do, and we're looking at things like that we can do. Bigelow had talked about the place being sort of an amplifier for psychic phenomena or whatever. I don't like to use the word. Psychic is more, it conjures up these ideas of magic and stuff, but it's probably just a description of quantum phenomena that are occurring that we're just now beginning to understand, like remote viewing is real, deja vu is real. I've seen personal anecdotal things where it convinces me that things that are like psychic stuff, are happening that are more than statistically possible. A Diet Coke.
Excuse me.
I know you want to eat there, but just real quick question.
Go ahead.
Has the release of the TikTok and gimbal videos made it easier, better?
Well,
more difficult?
I think what it's done, well, it's brought out the good guys and the assholes out of the woodwork. So I know we see who is there to debunk no matter what, right? And that's no point in that. I mean, I don't even understand that. So somebody's driving that. That is interesting to me. We see people who mean well, and we also see people who are doing things that are sort of fraudulent, right? And what it has done is brought the public awareness up that, hey, this isn't fringe. It's a real thing that's going on. The Navy's been seeing it for decades. We've probably been seeing it for centuries. And it's real science that needs to be done. And by making it fringe has kept real science from being done. That's the interesting piece to me. And if you were going to create a stigma to keep people from looking into it, what you do is make it where you couldn't earn a living by doing it, right? And only people who get labeled as crackpots do that stuff, right? It's actually it actually has helped a lot, I think. Congress is taking it more serious. I've briefed Congress so many different times now in the last few years.
Well, this phenomenon's been in folklore for centuries.
You don't have a straw, mate.
I do. Thank you so much.
Oh, I think I'm Kelly. Okay. I was only talking to you guys about the career. Yeah. I'm just basic there. Okay. I'm glad to put that on my dual protection meditation, that I posted. Yeah. People were asking. Yeah, I think I got on one thing.
You know, so you guys have got to have a question that you're afraid to ask, or you think is too weird, or whatever. What do you got? All right, she got me. Okay, here we go.
Going out to the ranch with Jordan and Thomas on Sunday.
Oh, I'll probably be there.
All right. What is the worst hitchhiker effects that you know of? The scariest, weirdest stuff?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys are aware of this thing called the hitchhiker, but it's been talked about since the Bigelow era. In fact, I know who coined the term hitchhiker, but he hasn't told me it's okay for me to say that yet. But attach his name to it yet. It's basically Axelrod in that book.
Oh.
So I know Axelrod very well. And all that stuff is I've measured with scientific instruments in his house. It is freaky. We've had simultaneous events occur at his house, my house, and in a house in the Uinta Basin, all at once. So we've measured. I mean, within a microsecond, the events occurred, which that you can't do that. And but the worst phenomena is there have been a couple of people who had I guess you call them orbs, whatever, in their house, and or wraith-like things in their house. Yeah, and well, one of the neighbors of Axelrod had an orb fly through them, and they ended up with a very dangerous form of cancer from it.
Whoa.
And I don't think I think she's still alive, but she's having to go through all sorts of chemo and radiation and treatments like that to try and keep from that. Now Bigelow, reason he got rid of the place was he was convinced it killed his wife. And so I would call those pretty drastic hitchhiker phenomena. I don't want to talk about my personal things with it, not while we're filming, but I've had things
We can
happen.
turn it off.
We've all had things happen.
We'll turn it off.